Today is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, and this is the meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. We have our opening statement. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 852-5823-2163 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. So, welcome everyone, and thanks for your patience with the weather last week and, getting us rescheduled quickly. So, I call the meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. And the first item is the approval of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to revise the agenda. Item number 2, approval of the minutes. We are missing one of those 2 sets of minutes. And then I'd like to add, so we would take both of those off, the February 29th and the 3/25. The minutes from February 29th are in your packet, but I know no one's had time to review them yet, so we will table those till the next meeting. What is in your packet that I presume everyone won't need any time to review are the minutes from April 1st, April 2nd, and April 3rd site visits. So I would add that in their place, if everyone is amenable to that. So I think the motion would be to revise agenda item number 2 to remove approval of the February 29th and March 25th meeting minutes and instead approve April 1st, April 2nd, and April 3rd minutes.
So.
Oh, and actually, we also don't have a secretary. So I'm happy to do the minutes unless, Ellen, you want to do them or anyone wants to do them around the table. Otherwise, I can listen to the recording afterwards and do them from there.
I can take notes. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay, so moved.
All right. All right, so I made the motion, you second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, wonderful. So again, for your review are the minutes from February 29th in your packet. Moving on to April 1st, the minutes note that myself, Carolyn, and Dennis were present for the tour of North Andover, but as there was no quorum, we didn't call it. So that's just the official notice of that. I think we can probably approve these all together in one motion.
Sure.
The second one you have is for Tuesday, April 2nd. That was to be a visit to the Fairbank Community Center in Sudbury. That was canceled. We weren't able to reschedule it as a group. I think 1 or 2 members went on their own, but we didn't go as a group. And then the third set of minutes is the Wednesday, April 3rd. Again, the same situation. That was a posted meeting to go visit the Wilbraham Senior Center, and the minutes just note that the meeting was not called to order because there was not a quorum. So can I get a motion to approve the April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd minutes? Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right, wonderful. All right. That brings us to the updates on due diligence for the town-owned sites. And the town manager apologized, he could not be here. He sent me an email update on those. He says, town council is still completing their analysis on the school property. The good news is that the town clerk found some key information just yesterday, so we are almost there with the pathway for the school site, for understanding what that pathway would be. And then regarding the Bishop Road site, we still need a meeting with Mass Development regarding the location of the gate and the triangular land. He hopes to have a date certain for this meeting sometime this week. So those are those are the updates on that. Any questions?
Meeting starts at 6. Starts at 6, the meeting. Well, there's 5 of us here waiting for you. Yep, exactly.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm on my way.
Yep. It's Dennis.
Okay,
He'll be here in a minute.
awesome.
Okay, so can I follow up on that? So
Yes,
in
absolutely.
essence, what happened is we've made several requests and we've got no responses. From, what, a month ago, something like that?
We as building committee like to
I'm talking about the report on the land that we asked the town manager to follow up on, either through town council or getting a hold of.
right.
But it sounds like the town
Any other
council
way
has
for
made
us to
some
do this, so we don't
progress.
have to keep waiting to get the same answer that says, we'll meet another week and something else will happen and we'll make another call? Is there a way to get to the answer quicker that you're aware of?
For town council, it all funnels through the town manager's office. For Bishop Road, I've been CC'd on the correspondence for emails between them, and I know Meg Delory has acknowledged, and they're setting up communication to work on the Bishop Road site. So, it's kind of the bureaucratic process too with Devon's for that one, but I don't know if I think of something,
Well, the real question is really not, he's asking them about the triangle piece between the cemetery and our land? Is that
So
what he's
that
asking
was
about?
in
Where's that come
just in a conversation with the town manager's office, I did say I would like those to be, they could both happen at the same meeting, but they are really two separate issues, and I wouldn't want the movement of the gate to get drowned into or muddled into that triangular piece of land, because I think for the sake of our committee, we were talking about the actual DPW land. We were saying, we were
we had
not
nothing
talking.
to do with that triangle.
Right, that triangular piece of land. I mean, we were saying there were advantages to having it, but I would like those two.
What advantage was there?
Was that, I think there was just informal discussion that it would be advantageous to have that piece of land because
I have no idea that there's any advantage to that land or any discussion that there
I
wasn't
think
any
it
advantage
just
to that land.
came, just because it
It muddles the water, in my opinion.
yes, that's what I was saying, is that I would like those two pieces to stay separate. I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
There was
don't
never
really
a
have to move the
discussion
gate
about
unless we
this.
pick
There was never a
that
discussion
site.
about the triangle being involved with anything.
Agreed. That's what I'm saying, is that last I heard about it, it was a meeting about the gate and the triangle. And I said, don't make it about the gate and the triangle, make it about the gate. And if you also want to talk about the triangle, but the triangle is not required for our purposes. So does that make sense?
No, it makes no sense that the triangle was brought up at all. That makes no sense at all.
Okay.
We don't need the triangle. It has
No.
nothing to do with the DPW land or anything else.
No, it doesn't have to do with that project. I think there were two parallel conversations going on that now I think became one conversation. They don't need, they should stay parallel. I'm agreeing with you, Ken. They don't need to be, because we only need the gate and the road ownership, the gate and the road ownership and maintenance, right? It's the,
Yeah, we need to clarify, definitely the road ownership, and I know that hasn't been done, right, and the gate cannot be moved. So that's
Yeah.
that's a huge key. And then would come, do we need the triangle if we need room? But I think like you're saying, they're kind of, in my opinion too, they're not all one thing together. They
Right.
could be
They're two separate things.
Okay, we'll get back to that later, but as far as I'm concerned, the triangle opens an entirely different conversation with Devon's, which we don't need to have. How we would acquire land from Devon's, how they would swap it to us, all this other stuff, which we don't
Right.
ever want to go down that route, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I agreed. I think that they don't, I think the triangle of land muddies it because
It's just
as
a
we
hole in the
were,
ground, big hole in the ground.
yeah, as we were looking at the sites, we were looking at whether or not there was enough
Right, the
room
next to
within
brush dump.
within the
Yeah.
fence, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I do recall that, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were trying to, you think you might need it,
You might need part of it, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Nice.
But until we start really delving into it, right, you know.
Okay. All right. Any other follow-ups or questions, discussion about that?
Do we really, if we only, now let me get this right, so we only really need to move the gate if we choose that site? Or are we gonna go, are we going through all this just to say it could be done? Right, because we don't really need to move the gate if we don't end up choosing that site. So if the
Right.
gate became such an issue that we couldn't move it, that would pretty much be like, all right, well then that's one less site we're looking at, if I understand this right.
Right, so I think the idea is just like the due diligence on the school site, is we have to know what the pathway is, right? So if the gate can be moved and it's a matter of a memo of understanding or surveying or the cost of it or whatever, then I think that would give us the green light to go ahead considering that site. But if, for example, Mass Development came back, I'm just speculating here, so I don't know. Mass Development came back and said, no, you can't because of the security of the airfield or something. Well, then that would change the way we would
Okay.
proceed, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's just trying to find if it's an option. Am I
I
summarizing
think
that well?
so. If these
Okay.
critical items, if these aren't possible, then that site pretty much gets eliminated, right?
Right, yep. Yeah, not that we have to actually move it in order to move forward, but if it's possible to move.
This- I'm sorry. I don't quite see it that way. Just, I'm looking at a bigger picture. I believe the town should be entitled to use a road that's indicated as a town road. So I believe the gate should be, if you want to do a separate issue, I think
Right.
the town should get the gate moved no matter what, to where it goes down to where McPherson Road starts. And we establish that that in fact is Bishop Road, and a town road.
That is established?
No, I'm trying to
Oh, that's what I'm
establish,
saying,
I was
yeah.
asking you guys, a couple months ago or something, to try to establish
Yeah.
that. We have frontage on a road, and it is a real road. And therefore, they were not entitled potentially to close off our road. So that's what I'm trying,
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to get the gate down the road,
Right.
no matter what.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
potential of using the road for anything
Hi, Dennis.
could be a gillow.
Well,
My
and
apologies.
And then
to
that takes
community
away
and
the
public.
question of whether the gate is involved with the senior center or not. It puts it in a different light.
That's where it belongs anyway.
right. But I think either way, the appropriate communication has to be set up with Mass Development to make that move in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what,
Unless we get the DPW to just,
Go
open
out
the
and move
gate,
it.
put another gate down the road. Just go. If we just built a second gate and left the first gate open, the problem is done.
If we own the road, we
If you own the road.
could, our road, right?
That's, it's
So-
unclear. We do own the road.
Well, we don't. See, that's,
I don't know for, that's, yeah. that's
Send them a
something
bill
we're-
saying, hey, you owe us this much money in rent for holding our road hostage.
anyway.
Well, they're gonna have a meeting soon, it sounds like. Hopefully.
hopefully so, yeah. All right. So I think that brings us to item number 4, which is the vacant board seat. As most of you know, Chris Prell stepped down. We thanked him for the service he had given. He just had competing priorities. So that does leave us with one open seat. The opening has been posted. It was emailed out to the town-wide email. If you're on that group email list, you would have received that last week. It was also posted on the town's Facebook page and the town's website, and then I shared it off of the town's Facebook page to the senior center's Facebook page. And then those that applied in the first go-round but didn't get a seat were also sent a specific email to them, inviting them to reapply, because I know Janice Livingston had said, as she was explaining who had gotten picked and not gotten picked, that this would be a long duration committee and that there was always the possibility that a seat would come available at some future point. So, so anyone watching from the public who has any interest in that, you have until Friday to submit just a simple email, letter of intent or of interest to the assistant town manager's office, which can be sent to atm@ayer.ma.us if anyone is interested. So, and if you know anybody, talk it up. And all right. Anything, any discussion, further discussion on that?
No, ma'am.
All righty, okay. So site visits and discussion of the architect and the vote to select the architect. So since our last meeting, some of the members have gone to see sample properties from the architects that we interviewed. Does anyone want to provide a summary of those or any thoughts about them?
Let's see. I went on a visit to Wilbraham and then also to Sudbury, and which was by the two different architects. One was by Catlin and one was by BH&A. I was incredibly impressed by Wilbraham, and I had already months ago seen North Andover, which was very, very similar, but Wilbraham was an improvement over any little tweak thing, I thought. But it was so open and welcoming, and there were people in all these areas, and it was open, and it just moved from one place to the next, and there were open areas where there, the cafe where people are kind of bustling around, and then it went into the it's not the library. They have a library, which is the quietest place, and then on the other side of the fireplace, they had like a living room area, and there were people in there, and I don't know, I just loved it. And the stairs that go up, which are lower, and all of his philosophy, the open glass that looks into the rooms or look down, and the mechanical room was just phenomenal. But it just was such a great place. It was cozy, but it was modern. The site in Sudbury I found to be more modern, industrialized, kind of cold. It was basically a long hallway, that you went off to different rooms and stuff. And there was a little cafe, and behind that there was a little living room area, but it was a day when we had the snowstorm, so there weren't a lot of people there. But that connects to the swimming pool and the recreation department, and then upstairs was the school department. The entrance was kind of awful because they had to create a space for the schools upstairs. So you walk in and it's this little vestibule with mailboxes and all kinds of stuff. But, it had some modern stuff. They were having a lot of problems with their bathrooms, which had these wave doors that didn't close, and they're individual bathrooms, so you're sitting there and you're waiting for the door to close. And the floors that they made looked like they could be slick, and they didn't have, the staff said they had to really fight to put rugs on them and things like that. So there were just things about it, when I was in Wilbraham, I felt every little detail just seemed so nice. And then when I was in Sudbury, I just felt there were mistakes and there were problems and things like that. Not as well done. They had to put up yellow paper on their glass wall because they were afraid of people walking into them and things like this. But I don't know. That was just my opinion. You liked some of them.
I also went to, where did I go? North
Sudbury.
Andover and to Sudbury. I would agree that the Sudbury building definitely had a utilitarian feel to it. I mean, the fit and the finish weren't quite what you'd want, and the entrance, I pretty much would agree with all of that. I think that the problem for the architect there was that it essentially felt to me like it was a senior center on the bottom floor of an office building, and that the need to have the public school offices upstairs and then have the long corridor leading to the... So I think that your sense of the building was very similar to what my sense of the building was. We were given a tour, an exceptionally nice woman, just a volunteer who took us around. She didn't have a lot of specific information about how the design was arrived at and, you know, what the trade-offs were. So I couldn't kind of get a sense of what the town had been asking for from the architect, although clearly they made significant compromises in terms of the room size, you know, the high ceilings, and it did have a kind of hotel lobby feel to it when you come in the door on the right. And in North Andover, I thought that the building, there was a kind of certainly more a homey feel to it. Interestingly, as I think Katie had pointed out earlier, the director at North Andover had significant reservations regarding the architect, just their engagement with and some of the design decisions they had made. And interestingly, she had, you know, the yellow paper on the walls. I mean, she was not involved in any of the design decisions and was deeply perplexed by too much glass being distracting, that there was too much, you know, like that.
Are you saying that was in North Andover, or are you talking about, because I didn't see that in North Andover, I only saw it in Sudbury.
No, in North Andover, they had the glass on the second floor, they had the glass between the walls. Were you?
Yeah. I think he's saying, speaking of how you were talking about
Yeah.
the paper on the wall, I don't think North Andover actually had the papers on the wall.
No,
but they didn't like the...
Right, they didn't like the fact that
There's so much glass.
that there was so much glass that they needed, it was too distracting for whoever was in which room, and that they couldn't kind of get the privacy or the kind of the warmth that might be generated in a more enclosed space. And you know, to Katie's earlier point, that her sense of the architect, shall we say, was that it was very difficult to deal with, just button heads and not flexible enough regarding some design choices. I know there was a big contretemps regarding the fireplace and should it be moved or not, and you know, why would it be better to leave it in the middle of the room versus put it on the outside wall. And that kind of raises a red flag for me a little bit. But in terms of the feel of a standalone, and I think that one of the advantages that we now have is that the design decisions for a standalone senior center will be much easier, I think, than for a multi-purpose, you know, intergenerational facility, because we can now kind of focus more, and the architect can be more focused, like in North Andover, which might have been an impediment when they were working in Sudbury.
Yeah, because one of the things was she didn't like the furniture, but they wanted the same furniture in recreation and the school department and in the senior center, and she was feeling that wasn't appropriate for the seniors, but they wanted to buy all the same furniture. So that was a big...
And so following up on, and I know you did a lot of work with getting the recommendations, yeah.
References.
And the references, and I followed up with, was it Randolph? With Linda Hayes and Randolph, I think. Mm-hmm. And just because I wanted to get a better sense of Bargman Hendry, you know, how are they to deal with? And her experience with that whole process was very, you know, she felt it had gone well and smoothly. And no, I'm sorry, it was Linda Hayes in Situate. So she kind of felt like working with them had been, you know, relatively easy. She didn't kind of feel like she was butting heads much, and that they had made some last minute changes, and, you know, that Bargman Hendry had been amenable to that and had worked with them in terms of moving things around near the end of the process, and that it had gone smoothly there. So,
In general, I find that most of the people who gave references were very positive about the people they work with. I mean, that's why they picked them as references, I think. I think many people acknowledged that Catlin was a very strong in his opinions, and it was, you know, so you had to, you know, stand up for if you disagreed. But they also said in many instances they felt that he was right in the final decision, but that he did give in a couple, you know, in many cases. But yeah, I think they all seem to like the ones that they worked with.
Do you have
First of all, I do want to, again, thank Ellen for the references. I've double-checked those again today. And it seemed like the references, I think you'll hit the nail on the head, and most likely the references were from clients that were equitable with working with the architect. So I was lucky enough to be accompanied by Ellen and Carolyn McCreary to Sudbury, and with you guys to go out to Wilbraham. So I saw the examples of, you know, from each architect. And I would say that I think pretty much an undeniable fact that the Wilbraham project was a warmer project. Both projects, I thought, I was looking at it a little bit differently from some construction angles and whatnot, and I thought both projects had positives, but again, not knowing exactly what the objectives were from each side of it, it made it a little confusing. But I wanted to say that the directors we met with, especially the lady in Wilbraham, were just incredible. This woman worked, as you know, 14 years it took them to build that place. And the other one was like, what, 11, 10 years, something like that. So it seems to me that the whole process is a long process for all of us to undertake, number one. It's hard to say exactly what the, okay, let me rephrase it. What I want to say is that I learned a lot from both experiences, okay? But I think the thing that I learned the most was the time that it takes to get the process done, and the fact that there were very little, I thought in both instances, there was very little concern for, I want to say budget saving or cost savings. And I think Ellen mentioned something to me which was important, and that is maybe we're paying for this expertise and we don't want to do cost savings. But I can tell you right now in Sudbury, they had a very unusual door and side light system. They had 8-foot doors. All the hardware was way up, high-end hardware that they used on the doors, and that was excessive. And the side lights were actually more industrial, very similar to an office space that I would see, you know, when I was building office space. But one of the comments we heard from Sudbury was that they felt when you were inside those rooms that the amount of glass between you and the corridor almost felt uncomfortable to the occupants of the room. So the architect was thinking it would be an open feeling, but when people occupied the room and used it, they came back and said, nah, you know, I'm not sure. This almost feels like I'm in a fishbowl. So I think as a committee, we're going to find, I'm glad that we went out to see things and we can see more, because I think we're smart enough to figure out what may or may not fit right for the town of Ayer. So the experience of fitting it to the town of Ayer, I think, is where we come in, and that we're capable of doing that. Both architects clearly have all the background, the recommendations, the quality of work and whatnot. The floor coverings are an issue. We heard that from the applicants, from Catlin when he was here. And we saw a situation so I can tell you when we stepped into entrance of the building in Wilbraham, they had, right in front of the building, Dan, you appreciate this, there was basically a cleaning system for your shoes, which is subset to the concrete, parallel with the concrete. So that was something I would have liked to see no matter what. So he used 2 of those. He had one in the lobby, just inside the door, and one outside. So that's gonna get the
strips.
dirt, and, yeah, it's a name to it. I can't get it right now off the top of my head, but it's a company that makes that system. Whereas the other building in Sudbury, you walked in and you were immediately on a tile floor, which was definitely a mistake, that they had to cover with carpet. So that was an error. Somebody made a mistake.
Right.
I think the whole concept of the restrooms, which I did a little work on later and looked at on my own later about a couple of things, was interesting. It's almost as though the architect had, we have to comply with ADA. We have to do what we feel is best. But we had a comment back on, Mr. Catlin sat here and said, make sure you don't use the push button system, use a wave system. Yet we heard from Sudbury, people go down the corridor and the sensor picked up the wave of people and opened the bathroom door. So it's an interesting twist that in an attempt to get the best product. We heard another thing, that they had, both of the buildings had all the temperature control systems you could imagine. They had all the lighting control systems. They have all the energy efficiency systems. So we're going to get that no matter what, because the code is high right now. So we have a high energy code, and especially in Ayer, we're a green community. So we're automatically 20% above the energy code in Massachusetts. So they all had all the electronics that you could name, so much so that the director in Wilbraham said, geez, I wish I had a switch on this wall, because the timer comes on in the big room when we don't need the lights, or something else that was beyond the director's ability, a simple switch on the wall to shut the room off and on at the beginning of the day, and it might have been better than an electronic timing system. So we will get into that. We will get into whether we need, how much of electronics in an energy management system, or building HVAC system, and things like that. The one thing that I did remember, though, was that Sudbury seemed to only be about 10 or 11,000 square feet on the first floor.
Yeah.
And the other one was the 15,000 range, I believe. So the Sudbury rooms, it seemed like enough space to me for most activities that you had.
It did not seem, the rooms seemed...
They were bigger.
Yeah, much. You didn't get the warm fuzzies in Sudbury, and I don't think it was designed to provide the warm fuzzies necessarily, in terms of the large room, that the commercial kitchen was not...
Yeah.
Was there certainly, and they were going to be using it, but it was, my sense of it was, and perhaps you could speak to this, that it was not the kind of focal point that you perhaps envisioned the commercial kitchen being in terms of the, you go into a home and the kitchen is the place you want to be. For them, it was more, and again, in Sudbury, more like this is the high school cafeteria and there's the kitchen off to the
Yeah,
side.
I think most commercial kitchens are that way, and in fact, you want to limit the number of people who are in your commercial kitchen from a cleaning and sanitation perspective.
So you're not looking at the commercial kitchen with the island in the center, or with the teaching availability around the sides and that kind of thing? This is just...
We aren't to that place in the conversation yet, but I wouldn't prioritize that, just because all the other commercial kitchens we've seen had center racks that could be moved out of the way, and you could pop up some tables without having to...
Okay.
Or you could teach out of the window. That I'm not as concerned about.
Okay.
But that's, I think, a great example of something that either one of these architects can customize the building in ways that we want, whether it's, but you're not going to have a home kitchen either way.
Okay.
Or an open kitchen.
You could have the commercial kitchen in the back for the banquets, and you only need a range and a small stove in the teaching area.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
only the teacher's going to be cooking.
Yeah.
So you can make a little mini kitchen like.
So, but in North interestingly, in North Andover, when I asked, so what was the square footage and how much did it cost? Her response was, we don't know.
Well, the woman in Sudbury didn't even know what the square footage
No,
was.
but the reason she didn't know the cost was because it was still being negotiated. That is, at the end of the process, they had run into conflict with the architect. And I don't know where the conflict is between the town, the architect, and the construction company. but there was a clear, it seemed to me, miscommunication there, and they were now, negotiating that.
I think that conversation came up a little bit in Wilbraham too, but I kind of drilled her with, she and I had a little question and answer session going when you guys were there. And the other thing I think we want to keep in mind is that there's no way that we can know what the committees in these various towns were made up of, what their level of construction experience or expertise or billing or whatever it might be. So, we kind of have to keep that off to the side and hope that we have enough help here to figure that out. But I did want to comment on the commercial kitchen. So I just remembered Dave's a chef, so he knows a lot about kitchens.
I didn't know that.
So the commercial kitchens, I thought were in both places were over the top.
Yeah.
You could easily
Neither one was using it
they
at
could
all.
be in the 110 grill, easy. They had every single. So we need to look carefully at that. We may not need the full blown. You need.
Hey,
Dishwasher
shortchange our seniors.
Right, you have to be careful though, because that's going to be a lot of money there.
It's a tricky
The
balance.
Exhaust systems and all.
Right,
a
but
balance.
it's kind of, what I've learned from the existing senior center is that it's a little bit all or nothing. So if you, in order to have the permit for a commercial kitchen, you have to have a triple sink
Yeah.
or a commercial dishwasher. You have to have the correct ventilation. And if you don't have, and I think the third one is 6
have to
inches
have
off the floor.
You have to have
And the
enough
hand
square
wash.
footage for refrigeration.
Yes.
You gotta have the freezer. You gotta have.
And the hand washing sink.
One of
There
them had a
were,
walk-in. One of them had a walk-in.
we don't need to walk
Cool.
in, no. But the difference is if you're missing any one of those things, that you can't do anything. So you can only hot hold or cold hold. So it's kind of all or nothing. So do you need a walk-in fridge or freezer? Of course not. But are you going to have to put in that big hood?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So.
In the Ansel system and fire protection system,
Right,
whatever
right.
it is.
So-
It's the commercial stuff.
And this is an interesting time of transition for senior centers because those who have had commercial kitchens were using them very frequently up until COVID. And then those that haven't had them, obviously were using just their ASAP, their Aging Service Access Point. Their, like we have Mock as our provider for Meals on Wheels and congregate lunches pre-COVID. They were using them and they were bringing food in bulk, and you could hot hold full-size trays of mashed potatoes. But once COVID hit, almost all of the ASAPs went to pre-packaging in TV dinners. And so a lot of senior centers, especially ones that we looked at, Wilbraham had just opened 2 weeks before we went, and North Andover's been open. Well, they just opened in October, but they've been open a couple of months when we went back. They're in that process of they're just getting congregate meals back, and then I think are going to grow into their new commercial kitchens. So, we have had, that was one of my priorities 2 years ago when I started, was getting a congregate meal program back up and running as quickly as possible. So we've been doing our congregate meals a lot longer than another senior center than some of the other ones have been. And then I'd love to see us transition into cooking meals right away when we get in.
I thought, to finish up my thoughts on
Sorry,
that, I thought the Catlin's building represented pretty much exactly what Catlin told us at the meeting. That it had the mind-boggling mechanical systems and insulation, which we could see when we went up above and stuff. So basically, it was a 3-story building. I think we talked about that. It was built to look as a 2-story building, but it was a complete third floor with
He called it the attic.
steel
I
deck,
think, yeah.
concrete deck, steel. The whole thing was built as an attic, but it was a full-blown third floor, but a finished staircase all the way up to the third level.
Right.
And the elevator, of course. We could even see in the mechanic room, which is pretty interesting. I could see the top of the elevator shaft. It was boxed up in the mechanical room, so everything was up there. So you're really getting that building. If that's what he said he was going to build, then that's a good design. There's nothing. I don't think we got the full benefit of the architect's work in Sudbury because it's a mix and match building.
Right.
There's a
right.
daycare center, there's a pool, and I don't know the whole concept, but I would say that of the description that Catlin gave us, that building matched what he said. So that'd be my final comment.
Just something that occurred to me though. There were some comparisons that I saw in terms of like storage.
Right.
In the Catlin building, there was storage everywhere. It was big and wide, and the shelving was wide.
Yeah.
Whereas in the other building in Sudbury, it was thin, and the shelves were thin, and they said for the cleaning people, it wasn't big enough to fit the barrels or everything. So they actually had a whole bunch of trash barrels in their hallway where they were keeping things. Yeah. And, the ugly ones. And there was sinks in almost every room in Wilbraham. Mm-hmm. And there was only one sink in the art room in Sudbury. And there were just so many, I don't know. It's so much nicer. It's just like, oh, this is great. But,
It was really nice.
It was
had a lot of detail in it.
Yeah.
How much did they spend in Sudbury and how much did
Well,
they
they
spend?
spent 13 million in Wilbraham.
Right.
13 in Wilbraham for 15,000 square feet. And Sudbury was
I think it's like, I looked it up.
high 30s, right?
Oh, is it? Oh, I don't
But it's a much bigger
But
building.
but it is a gym and a school offices and daycare and a senior center all together, and
And
they
a pool.
also renovated. But the pool was not new.
Yeah, it was
the
fixed.
pool was existing, and they had the building was over here, and
Complex
they
project.
Yeah.
built the new building over here, and then knocked down and take out the old one. So yeah, but the pool got some renovations, but the pool was the thing that's an island that stayed in the middle.
The other thing that made Wilbraham look, what I believe made it look nice, real nice, is because they had a tremendous piece of land.
It was a very beautiful.
Oh,
piece
yeah,
of land.
right on a
piece of
golf
land.
course.
Not on a golf,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice flat piece of land. It didn't need, it was just a nice setup.
I still felt like North Andover, even though it was not on as nice a piece of land, it was basically the out parcel of an apartment complex. Also still a very nice looking building. You would, if you looked at the two of them side by side, the same person built them.
Designed them.
I agree.
So, yeah, so
So am I correct in saying that the consensus is that the committee would like a building that looks like a building that John Catlin designed? Is that a?
Yeah, I think, I would
Is that
say it
a-
looks like a building which has a New England look to it.
Yeah.
A town of Ayer look,
Not as
whatever.
industrial.
Yeah, right.
Or
No, I
as,
agree. Yeah.
yeah.
And so for me, I think, how do we get past, because I think I heard it two separate, how do we get past the personality clash? Or how do we kind of move forward with how are we going to get along through this extended, difficult, convoluted process between the committee and the architect and the town, so that not only do we feel like we got a good building, but that everybody feels like they were fairly treated and the costs come out where they were anticipated to come out and all the rest of it. I mean, how do we navigate that?
I just want to make one remark to remind us that we're not giving out the contract for the building right now. We're giving out a limited contract, so we're only in a
Feasibility.
limited contract. So just to remind us again, but in all probability, there's probably a 90% chance, unless something really stupid happens, that the same architect will move on to the building. But we're in 100 and plus 25 something range now of consulting us about putting the building on the land, finishing the program, looking at some concept plans, elevations. So it's not a full design. So
Correct.
there's safety in that is what I'm getting at.
Right, no, that's a good point. I was getting a little bit ahead there.
Yeah.
But I think either one of them can do the consulting work, but, I'll just let it go. So I was pretty much impressed with BH&A's presentation and their firm and what they've done. But the more I thought of it and meeting with, Ellen and Carolyn and whatnot, and going to the sites, I would have to agree that Catlin just seems to have an advantage in senior center work. So, in that, I would try to answer Dennis's concern by saying that I feel comfortable with either one of them, and I think we can anticipate whatever we have to anticipate with Catlin, and we have enough professionals on this group to figure it out. So if the general consensus was that Catlin would be the choice of the group, then I would go along with that.
We've only heard from 3 so far. Dan and Dave, do you want to add something?
2 big votes here.
I think I agree. I like Catlin. I think he's a salesman, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on him. But BH&A, I'm sure either one of them can design the building. BH&A was more nuts and bolts, no nonsense, military, right? You ask him a question, he answers it. That's it. He didn't go on and on. Catlin to me was more of a salesman, but I like this. From what I've heard, I like what they're saying about the design of his products. I think if we have to, I'm sure we can reel him in and be like, when push comes to shove, ours is the final choice. It's not him. He works for us.
Right.
And we just have to remind him that you work for us. And that should take care of any of those problems.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was in Southwest Florida, so I couldn't go to the sites.
Darn.
Yes, I know, I did, I think kind of going back to last time, yeah, and Dave did just say this, BH&A's approach is very nuts and bolts approach, and Catlin brings a whole kind of,
Down home.
big, thinking about it from a further away perspective and long-term, and like, what's this gonna look like? That could be a good approach in some ways, the nuts and bolts approach, but I did feel like I think what might be best for the committee might be somebody like Catlin to sort of drive us and put us in the right direction. And like Ken said, both firms, they can do the work. And one thing I know Dave isn't here, the other Dave, is he has worked with BH&A, and I don't recall exactly. I know there was a negative issue on the project, so that kind of, I wanted to hear some more about that.
As did I. I think it would have been helpful for us to know the more in-depth specifics on those specific concerns.
Yeah.
Did he give us any, Katie, did he give you any background on that?
He did. I'm just unclear what he told me individually versus in a public forum.
Because he did mention that BH&A was originally the architect for the project, but at some point they felt they weren't able to do the work, and then they hired Abacus to finish the project.
I think I remember him saying that the BH&A wasn't really listening to them, and they were just kind of going along a path and just kept going. And so I do remember him saying that. So yeah, I like the thing with Abacus. And I think looking back, I'm pretty sure Catlin, although it wasn't by much, did have the highest score from the reviews. And kind of looking at pricing without looking at it close, the hourly rates were very similar.
Very
so I think it
Very
doesn't,
similar.
there's nothing to go by there.
Very similar.
Looking at it from a price perspective.
I do think that we're aware now from people we've talked to, even the ones who love him and love their work. The woman in Wilbraham said, I wanted a wonderful senior center. I got a wonderful senior center. He can be a pain in the ass to deal with, but, because sometimes he wants to do it this way and you have to either stand up or whatever, particularly in colors and furnishings, which isn't his big area. But I think if we know that those things are issues, we can look at those. Apparently, when they made the contract for 12 months, and when it ran out because of COVID, some of the things they had to order took over 15 months. So then the contract wasn't clear on how they were going to charge. And in one case, I think it was Wilbraham, the head of their board wanted a bocce court. And they asked him to do a bocce court, and he did a bocce court, but there wasn't a discussion of how much it was going to cost to do the bocce court. So then they were outside of the 12 months, and that's one of the things that they're haggling over. So I think we have to be more careful about looking at, okay, if it takes longer than 12 months, how are we going to, charge, or what's going to, in terms of defining things.
Right.
So we hopefully don't get into any of those situation. But I don't think I think there's going to be times when we're going to, he's going to be, just because he considers himself the authority on it. But I think he does wonderful work.
So what it's gotten, I mean, given that perspective, what I'm now thinking is that how do I, as a committee member or the committee in its entirety, navigate the design choices to build the best possible building for the citizens of Ayer, that it has because from what I understand, I didn't see Wilbraham, but I did see North Andover, the fit, the finish, the quality of the woodwork, to what extent are we kind of investing in that, and what about the contractual piece, and how do you separate them? How do you separate them? Because clearly, I think and I hope, frankly, that Mr. Catlin has nice taste. I think he would, the general consensus is he has very nice taste in the look and feel and what he wants his buildings to do. Nice taste will frequently be more expensive than not so nice taste. And to what extent are we in on that? And again, I mean, this will play out with any architect, I think, over time. But it's just gotten me to thinking of how do you kind of separate, or do you try to separate, all right, this is a design choice, this is a how much do we want to afford choice, and bringing those two things together. Because, I think that, I mean, not now, to Ken's earlier point, but, 6 months from now, we're going to be running into that, I suspect.
Do you want to comment on that, Earl? So, I can only speak, from my own experience. So, one of the things that came up that was pointed out to me was that when we hire an architect, this is counter to the way I think, but when we hire an architect, we're paying for their expertise, and their expertise has a value. So they should be able to make the selections. But in my experience in the real construction world, and I don't know how this applies when you get into union work, or when you get into, Chapter 149, prevailing wage work. But typically when you put out a contract, there is a provision that you can substitute if it's an acceptable substitution. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if the architect specifies a door they're going to specify everything, because we're paying them to do that. Mm-hmm. But if they specify a door manufacturer, and you go to the door manufacturing companies, and A can substitute for C and it's the same quality, they should be able to substitute. Mm-hmm. So you should be able to get, the contractor is where that is going to fall back to, not the architect. The architect is going to be working with us to say that's an acceptable, not an alternate, but acceptable substitution. Approved equal is the term. So we as a board are going to have to be doing a lot of that stuff when we get down to that level of, it's the same with the carpet. They may recommend, he may say, I only use Bentley. That's all I ever use. Well, wait a minute. There's 14 carpet manufacturers.
Right.
Some of them are recycled carpets, which is more environmental today. Some of them aren't, whatever it is. But we will have to make probably at least 100 of those decisions along the way. So we're going to be depending on, our own thoughts and way to work the thing out.
Sure.
And then, what Catlin did in Wilbraham was, just high-end woodwork. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
All the wood trim, everything was wood trim. Wood. What's the term when the ceilings are all broken?
Coffin,
all coffin ceilings. For sound attenuation and whatnot.
Not all of them.
That's what was in North Andover too.
The majority.
How big is the maintenance department?
Well, it was very nice, So we'll be making those kinds of decisions.
But that's also for sound deadening.
Yeah.
Right, but we may find out that, you can get, just as an example, maybe you can get sound deadening without putting the woodwork on it. There's things like that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think we can work with either one of them, myself, and it'll work out. And go with whatever anyone else wants. So.
I was just gonna say, I read this week, which is I guess he teaches a 4-hour class or something about how to build a senior center for, what group is that for?
The Massachusetts Councils on Aging, so that's
Councils on
my
Aging.
state advocacy
And it's
agency.
fascinating, because it really does spell out his philosophy, and then small things that he does to, the woman in Wilbraham was talking about how they have the ledging around, like a wainscoting almost, but it's really to use for direction finding, so you can actually kind of hold on to that and walk around the room, as opposed to have something like they do in age homes, where they put big things on the
Yeah,
wall.
you were talking about the handrail on the.
It was a handrail, and
Yeah.
it said this is a handrail, though it just looks like it's a decoration.
Right, but once
So-
I saw that, I can do that. I don't need him to tell me how to do that anymore.
Well, I know, I'm just saying,
But would you have ever thought of it?
No, but I got it now.
and just the idea, and I think,
Once you see it, you got it.
Yeah. So I think from my
But
perspective, the
there's
things
a lot
that
to it, a lot to
right.
it. There's a
The
lot
things that Catlin includes, sort of standard, for lack of a better word, in his buildings, that he has these best practices because he's just done so many in this space. I mean, we are going to have to make lots and lots of choices about those
do it.
things, but I like the idea that I don't have to figure that part out. I can say whether I want it to be wood tone or white, or whether I want it to be of this style or that style, but that he's already done this so many times that a lot of those little details that really do make it senior friendly for me as the end user, and to me it's nice to not have to figure those out or glean them as we go.
I think one other thing that was good about Catlin is, and it can be good, it can be bad, they're a small firm, so you're always going to get the people who are working on your project, but if they're really busy, that can be
That's true.
troublesome.
That's
But and, you know, one thing, I'm kind of, it seems like everybody really liked the Catlin building, so to me, it seems like while we're looking at the feasibility of fitting buildings into places, and eventually we might want a Catlin building, having Catlin doing the feasibility type of work makes sense.
So the question is, I guess, are we ready to vote to select an architect? I don't, given where we are with the due diligence on our 2 sites, I'm not sure if 3 sites, I don't know that we're ready tomorrow to start billing that architect for looking at those sites. So I guess what I'm saying is, do we want to choose one? Do you want to not make the decision? Do you want to tie off the loose end?
No, I'll let you, go ahead. I mean,
I want to say that you can tell by my comments at the beginning of the meeting that I think this process is taking too long.
Okay.
I think we have to take the steps to show that we're going to get something done. So I would be happy to go for the architect. We put out an RFP. We got qualified applicants for it. We know what it's going to cost. It's well within our budget. That we ought to do it. And then I would have them work on the 3 pieces. They may think they have to look at 10. We don't know how many. Did we reveal how many that they have to look at in the?
didn't we say,
Yeah, I think
I don't think we did
I
reveal.
thought in the RFP it said to give us design plans for 3 sites.
Okay, yeah, it could
I
have.
thought it did, because they kept referring
I
to
could be
that.
wrong, but I thought I remember reading something about
Anyway,
getting us
I'm
plans for 3
voting
sites.
and starting somebody up.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
I'm
Then that's
comfortable on,
I think we still have to negotiate a contract with him,
Right.
which
Right.
would take some time.
Well, I can't tell you, he's gonna give us a AIA form with 100, with the value
Right.
on it.
Yeah, but we have
Turn it
to
into
review
nothing.
it
It's
and
gonna
see
be-
if there's anything.
That'll be an easy contract.
As a point of order, I guess, Carolyn had emailed me and said that for the 2 members that are not here, they both had emailed me. Carolyn had just sent a short email that said her vote was for Catlin. And then Dave Grubb gave me the ranking. It was Catlin, BH&A, Abacus.
I think Abacus was 2. Catlin.
no,
Oh, no.
PH&A.
No, his
Yeah, his
is his ranking.
ranking. His
Was
ranking.
Catlin, Abacus, BH&A.
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
his ranking.
Yeah.
So, if we're gonna vote, do we include their votes? Do we, as a point of,
I don't think we can.
I don't think,
okay. So we just vote amongst the
You have
people
no
that are.
official way of saying that
Yeah.
they did that.
Okay, all right,
No,
perfect.
yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact, but yeah, you got
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted as a point of order to make sure we were all on the same
Yeah.
page with that. So I think if we're comfortable voting, we would do a roll call vote, I guess, for that.
Or we just make a motion saying that we want to award Caitlin the contract and vote
I guess
that
we
way.
can do that as well.
All right.
I make a motion that we appoint Caitlin,
Cat.
or Catlin, we offer them the contract.
Okay,
Second?
all in favor?
Any further discussion?
Actually,
Oh, further
yeah,
discussion.
further discussion. Yeah, okay, nope, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Chair says aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, wonderful.
So,
So Catlin will be the architect.
Yeah, Dan, who awards it?
so, yeah, I was gonna say, so I can reach out to Catlin and work with him to set up a contract.
Okay.
Separate from here.
Okay,
And that type of contract is something the town manager can sign.
Right.
And I don't think we necessarily need the committees to look at it or anything. We can,
Yep.
it's set up with the hourly rates and it's gonna be task order based, so I could do that outside here if you're comfortable.
sounds,
I'd like to look at it.
Okay.
I'll look at it, just as get another set of eyes on
Yeah,
it.
you wanna,
I just want to look at the contract, that's
Yeah.
all, not,
And if you could just let us know when the effective date of the contract will be. I mean, it's
yeah,
a month from now or 3 weeks, like, when is he on board, when is he officially on board?
okay.
I mean, that would be helpful.
You'll pretty much do it pretty immediate. So yeah, I'll work with them and we'll get that and then, I'll cue you in, Ken.
yeah,
Okay.
just let me see a copy of it in case there's something that I think is weird, whatever.
Sure.
And
and then you had the
See it at all?
original contact
I see the
with
contract and all.
the H&A and Abacus. Do you have an email you send them? Do you want me to
Yeah,
send?
I can reach out to them with the regret
Okay.
once we get the contract.
Have we
with
notified the
Catlin.
other three yet?
Yeah. Yeah, those three I do know, yeah.
Okay.
so I apologize for having obviously been late. In terms of the town, the 3 sites, is there anything substantive about, just in light of the most recent remarks? So we still had those 3 town-owned sites, which are all still in the running. And the RFP closes at the end of the week, and then we'll know whether or not.
Yeah, the private land RFP
Right.
closes. So Robert had sent me an email just an hour or so before the meeting with apologies that he couldn't make it. And his update was town council is still completing their analysis on the school property. The good news is that the town clerk found some key information just yesterday, so we are almost there with the pathway for the school site. So, and again, that was to determine what the pathway would be to piece out a separate parcel from that, what the pathway would be. And then for the Bishop Road site, he said we still need a meeting with Mass Development regarding the location of the gate and the triangular land. I hope to have a date certain for this meeting next week. And so then the discussion that followed was that the triangular piece of land was a separate issue and did not concern this committee unless it was deemed that we might need a little bit of it. And Dan had said it's possible we would need it, but we weren't sure. But that the most pressing and immediate piece was the moving of the gate. And so there was a little bit of discussion about the intermingling of that.
So, okay.
All right. Well, good. This is great. I feel like we're moving forward. Any other discussion about the architect before we move on to public input? No? All right. So I think that brings us to public input. All right. Go ahead, Pauline.
Good evening, Katie. Thank you for recognizing me. I just want to compliment all of you. I've followed this since this committee was formed. You've done a great job. I loved listening to Ellen's comments about the sites she visited. and I have a couple of other thoughts, which I think I better convey by email, but have you all considered, other than projects done by the architects, you were considering local ones, such as the one Ellen worked on in Groton? And Harvard just recently opened a new senior center. Shirley has a new COA, but not a senior center to my knowledge. And things that are a little more conducive to our area. And I listened intently to everything you said about the 3 sites you looked at. I'm glad Ken is on the architect selection committee, and will be reviewing potential contracts. But I just would like to bring it more close to home.
Pauline, in what way do you mean? I've heard you say conducive and close to home. Can you tell me a little bit more what you mean by that?
Well, Andover, Sudbury, and Wilbraham have well, in my view anyway, far better economies than Ayer has. It's a different population,
Gotcha.
Different seniors, different demographics. I'm trying to be very benign with this, but
Right.
I just, we go to Wilbraham to see if a senior center there would fit in Ayer, whereas we have a senior center in Harvard and a senior center in Groton, and our own. Just a suggestion. If you don't want to do it, it's fine by me.
Yeah, we did actually drop by the Harvard Senior Center on the way back from one of our visits, and I've been to the Shirley Senior Center a couple of times. The main thing I would say is different about that is both Shirley and Harvard's are not new builds. Whereas ours would be a new build. But I think it's a good point, and I think that's definitely something the committee is committed to, is making sure that the building we build fits the architecture, fits the character, fits the personality of the town.
Right. And can I just say, I think the issue is that we put out a call for architects who wanted to make proposals to do this work. And there were 6 of them that applied, and we interviewed 3. And then of those, we picked 2 that we preferred, and then we went to go see examples of their work. So that's why we ended up going to Wilbraham or Sudbury or places like that.
And I appreciate that, Ellen, and don't misunderstand my next comment, but salesmen are really good at what they sell. So I just leave it at that. I think you all are doing a fabulous job. Do not misunderstand. I really do.
Thank you.
But as my good friend, I think, Ken, will say, we have to analyze everything and be sure we're doing everything right. So that's all I'm saying. The other comment I would like to make is we have no responses to the RFP. I think the due date is Friday, Katie. Nobody seems to want to sell their land to us, so what do we do next? I guess the answer to that is we're still looking at the school property, which I'm happy to hear. So I will just end with that, and I'll see you next meeting.
Thanks, Pauline.
Thank you.
Any other public input?
I have input. One
Oh,
more.
all right.
Oh, was there another public input? Sorry.
No,
I think-
BA left. BA's, never mind.
I would like us to immediately stop referring to it as the school property, because it's not the school's property. There's
Right.
a school on town land up there.
Right, right.
So that could automatically throw the whole discussion off if people think we're taking property from
Yeah.
the school.
Yeah, right, and that's an important clarification, that it's and I think that's where, once that town council report is back, it will hopefully clarify some of that, and then we can move forward and make sure that we're,
Instead of calling it the school property, it's town property, town parcel, and whatever the parcel is, and stop calling it
right.
the high school. Call it
Well,
parcel
no,
number,
'cause
whatever.
it's not the high school for sure, so. yeah.
So the site,
Groton Harvard Road,
Here we
But
go.
have it all.
Groton Harvard Road.
so in terms of site selection, I was unaware that RFP is coming up empty, although I'm not surprised.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. We'll have to wait until.
I'm sorry, I thought she
The
was
RFP
speaking-
is, no, the.
Friday.
It's
Right.
due Friday, so
No,
people
I
have
understand.
until Friday to submit something.
Yes, no, I understand.
Yeah.
That the site selection, well, we'll see, but it seems like the site selection process is going to be, or might be much narrower than we might have otherwise anticipated. That is, there might not be too many choices in terms of what the architect is going to have to decide between. Am I wrong? No, I'm just kind of, I had initially thought that the architect would be heavily involved in kind of the nuts and bolts of, is this site better than that site, is better than that site, is better than that site.
It will be. But I think,
But we don't have, it doesn't appear like we necessarily have all that many sites that they're going to be able to choose between. Am I wrong in that, or?
If we don't get any proposals from people,
Yeah.
does that mean we can't look at certain other properties in town and ask for them?
we can do anything we want.
Yeah, we can do anything.
It's the United States of
Yeah.
America, which makes it.
I mean, just because they didn't,
The first feasibility study we did, we were looking at
Yeah.
private properties.
Got a whole
You know,
shakedown
Right,
in a
before we
report.
even reached out to them, hey, would this work? You know, perhaps this could be for sale. Should we go?
Yeah.
Should we go reach out to the owner? Does it, if it would work? You know, something like that. So
I think
we
that
could-
one of the most important next steps is going to be the program. So shouldn't we do the program first before we decide how many square feet have to fit on the lot? Or
Well,
we
I
do-
think that's certainly,
So
that's certainly
part
one of the
problem,
first steps with
RFP
the
that we put
architect.
out, you know, that's
Yeah.
part of the,
Yeah.
No, I.
so then we know it's 11,000, you know, and
Right.
then 11,000 would fit this way, or it'll be a T shape, or it'll be a curve, or it'll be something.
And with the caveat that what I heard universally in not only this go-round, but the previous site process,
Size.
yeah, was that do not make it too small. Make sure you can grow into it. It was said repeatedly that, you know, I wish we had, or
Yeah, I wish it was
compromised.
bigger.
Yes, I wish it was bigger, or I shouldn't have compromised on that room size, or our fitness classes are oversubscribed now and the fitness room is too small. I mean, I heard that in Situate, Lexington, North Andover. So just my thought process through this will be, you know, bigger is going to be better than smaller. I mean, that being said, I think that we can also look at population trends, size of the town. You know, what's the upper limit, probable upper limit in the next 20 years of, I mean, and I'm more than happy to kind of go down into those numbers. So, but my process is that, don't be too small. What are the population projections over the next 20 years, let's say, combined with Katie saying, I need X square feet for this kind of room, that many square feet for that kind of room, that many square feet for that kind of room, et cetera, et cetera. And that's gonna,
and that's something the architect will help with, like when they go through, when I was reviewing the feasibility study from the first go-around that predated me with Abacus, there were conversations about which rooms do you need, how many people do you have, what is the industry standard for this many square feet per person for this type of a room. And so they do have a formula that they use to add up to the total square footage that you need.
now, we had talked about having another public meeting to talk about what would go in the building, because some things have changed. Of course, when we did the last one, there was no pickleball courts, which is all the rage now,
I
and
have to comment on that.
different things like that. So I presume that they said that they get involved, because it's important to talk to the seniors and other people in the community, not just to hear what they want, but we have to get their support, because we have to go to town meeting and they have to support it if we're going to get this passed and get the funding.
Agreed.
So I think pretty soon after we have the architect, we need to start planning a public meeting that we would get some input from the community. so they feel a part of it.
Agreed, absolutely. And the architect will be a big piece of that as
Yeah.
well, in helping us with that. Right.
So do we feel that at this point in time, we're gonna, we engage Catlin, and that we are gonna have him concentrate on the 3 town-owned pieces that we have right now to work with and see how they look? Because he may throw one of those out right away.
Right. I mean,
Whatever. Or do we think,
Yeah, I think we talked too.
Or do we
about
start with the
programming.
program first?
Yeah, we probably should start with the program so we get the size
Yeah.
and dimension, stuff like that down.
right. Yeah, because he
And
won't be
then-
able to do the test fit without that.
And then, yeah, at the same time, we're gonna get them in 2 days if we get any of the private property.
so you're comfortable with the program side of it, that's your business, so.
Sure, but I mean, I think what will, as I envision it playing out, we would have a preliminary meeting about the program with the architect, getting my perspective, the committee's perspective, then you use that information to take to the first public forum to ask them what they want, right, as well, like getting input on what could be in the building. These are the things we think should be in, just like,
Okay.
in the previous iteration of it, there were Post-it notes that went up on the wall, like what are the most important things to you? And everybody got the opportunity to put up, I think, a couple of things. And then that information was synthesized and brought back to the committee to really begin talking then about building layout and all of that stuff. So it's a combination of both of those.
Now, the design of the one that was made previously is a 1 floor, isn't it? And Catlin has expressed his preferences for building 2 stories because he feels it's less expensive to build, to heat, and everything else. And the ones that we saw were 2-story, and they seemed to work beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, and just all 3 architects opened my eyes on that particular
Yeah,
point, so
because we don't need as much land.
Right.
That's the other thing.
So I think the next layer underneath that is that they have all said, if you're 10,000 square feet or less, put it on 1 floor.
Yeah.
If you're going more than 10,000 square feet, and most of the new buildings being built are going
More than
10,000 square feet,
Yeah.
then it is cheaper and makes a lot more sense to put it on 2 floors, both from a cost perspective and from a land availability perspective.
And I think that it would, I mean, I'm just thinking of the building in North Andover as well as the one we saw in Lexington, which wasn't done by those folks, but it just seems to me that 2 stories looks nicer generally than a flat 1-story kind of look to it.
You can make a single story look like you can architecturally do
Yeah.
roof lines and stuff.
Yeah.
I did want,
I still want to visit Townsend if we at all consider a 1-story floor plan, because that's a great example of a
Yeah.
larger building that's well situated and well designed
Yeah.
on 1 floor.
How big is it? About, do you know?
Now I would say it's about 15,000 square feet, and then the library that's attached would be more square footage, but yeah. Don't quote me on that, but
Before
if
I-
I had to make a guess.
this is a related question, but not exactly perfect. So the thing that I found interesting about all the proposals were that both architects, I'm just going to talk about the last 2 architects, they both included and delineated, although I'm not sure Catlin delineated it, but the other gentleman did delineate, the sub-consultants or subcontractors that they use in this phase of the work. And what surprised me was that they both want to control a civil engineer, and I thought that was unusual. I'm just not used to doing that. So Catlin insists on it, or did, so that could be our first argument.
And he's looking forward to that.
I'm curious about the fact that we have familiarity, we have the town engineer's advice, and if we get all the right information, we have knowledge of wetlands, we have knowledge of, we have all the knowledge, testing and so forth and so on. Should we consider not really in this phase, but when we get into the later phase, controlling the civil engineering. See, typically, my experience is the architect does the floor plan, here's the floor plan, it's gonna sit like this, it's a box, and I need sidewalks, I need this, I need that, and we draw it up, because we have experience with engineering. I just don't know how everyone feels about that.
Well, I mean, my concern, and again, I don't know whether it's a concern or whether it further bolsters your point in terms of us controlling the civil engineer, is that I think it's critically important that the building fit well with the outside world. That is the
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
so that the landscaping and the potential walking trails around or lack thereof, depending, that all kind of work well, and that the landscape architecture in the building be of a piece. And I don't know whether the architect would do that, or the civil engineer, or whether
Well, the civil engineer is going to do it. The question was, does the civil engineer report to the architect, or does he report to us? Do we hire him separately?
Yeah, I think, in this case, it's a building project, and the primary is the architect, I guess the primary consultant, and that would be one of their sub-consultants.
Right.
So I think, they've probably worked with him in the past, they work well with, he does a good job. And I don't know the scope of the work and how long it would, last. I know, like you're saying, we are civil engineers over at DPW, so we do this kind of stuff. And I'm also wondering, we would be reviewing some of these.
You'd be reviewing it.
Probably as like site plan and
Right.
that as well, so we'd be like reviewing our work, although I guess it's really the planning board. But
Yeah.
usually we do it. I would think it'd be better to have him stick with his
Okay.
civil engineer he's usually works with, and then he has a contract under and can control. Yeah, and then they probably work with the landscape architect as well. I'm assuming they've done a few of these. It all ties in. So.
And you had mentioned pickleball.
Well, the thing that was fascinating, I thought, was when we went out to look at these, two things we heard before from everybody, I think, was, geez, you gotta have a walking court, you gotta have a place to walk inside the building, and you gotta have a pickleball court. Yet neither one had those.
And interesting,
They did
in
have a
Wilbur,
pickleball in Sudbury, but it was run by the Park and Rec, and you
Right.
signed up differently.
Yeah.
It wasn't run by the senior center.
in North Andover, I think they said
a
that they,
I thought they
no,
did
North
have-
Andover, she said that they could do one pickleball in the big room, right? And then in Wilbraham, the one comment she did make was, because remember that their big multi-purpose room had one side that had vaulted ceilings and one side that didn't.
Right.
And she said she wished that they had kept the whole thing vaulted so that they could do pickleball indoors. But you're right, neither one of those facilities had pickleball outdoors on the property. And so I think that comes down to the piece of land we choose.
Yes.
Was pickleball even invented when those went out to bid?
Yeah.
Pickleball's only in the last couple of years. So
No,
pickleball-
it's been around for 20, 25 years.
Has it
Yeah, but
really?
it hasn't
It's
really
got
caught
popular
on,
recently.
right?
All right, okay.
It got popular recently, but it's been around.
Right before
I'd never
COVID.
heard of it until
Yes.
recently, so.
California, they started someplace, but
Okay,
So, when do we want to meet again? Knowing that it will take some time for Dan to reach out and then to receive something back from Catlin that we want to, I guess you want at the next meeting to be able to report that town council had, and the town manager's office had time to review it, right, and that we're good to go. And then we're also going to have on the 12th, the RFPs for private land, that will be due, so.
and hopefully we'll have an update on the land on Groton Harvard Road and also
McPherson, yeah,
McPherson,
or Bishop Road,
because that'll make
whichever, on Bishop Road.
Bishop Road.
Bishop Road.
Um,
So that we'll know what properties we are going to want a feasibility study on, right?
Yes, so,
Well, there's another option too. If we just show them all three, and he says, this is the place.
I I like the feel of this place.
I mean,
That
but
makes
it-
our decision a little bit easier and how we should pursue getting that spot.
Yes, I mean, because, to that point, with either,
Do you know how to
we
pull
go,
up the town
that is,
calendar?
if the architecturally ideal spot, or the best possible spot for the building in the architect's view, this would be great if you could have it.
I can tell you where it's gonna be.
Yeah, then what if the administrative problems for that, I mean, do we push against those and say we want it here in spite of the administrative issues, or do we?
I don't think there are any administrative, that depends on your interpretation. See, the administrative issues I see are just slowdown issues, rather than let's do it issues. I just see it different, I'm sorry.
I think we have to just wait for the,
Yeah,
Either way, we won't finish the study. We'll get the answer before we finish the study. So we'll know.
we'll get the answer.
We'll get the answer about the land.
So are we looking at 2 weeks, or what are we looking at?
yeah, 2 weeks is probably reasonable, or is that rushing it on your side, Dan?
Yeah, that's probably doable.
The 24th?
Yeah, we
So.
can do that.
But the affordable, so we'd have to do 7:15 or 7:30 if we did the 24th, right? Is the Affordable Housing Trust there in this room, right?
What about the 23rd? Oh, that doesn't change much.
That's the
Gotta be
planning
careful
board.
with APAC too being available a little bit.
So I think we have to tentative, because I know Carly had said that this isn't the final calendar, because some boards don't get posted here until they submit their agenda. So I think we could tentatively plan
Yeah.
for the 23rd or 24th. Does anyone have a preference between those two? You probably have a preference for the 24th, right? Because planning board's on the 23rd?
Doesn't matter to me if it's in the evening.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we'd have to do we'd have to do probably either 4:30 or 7:30 on the 24th.
Oh, I had forgotten about that. We want to do 4:30 earlier?
He probably has trouble getting here at 4:30. Although, not
Is he
sure.
going to be able to come if it's later?
Could you do the 25th at like 5 before Concom?
We could,
Or
that'll
5:30.
just eliminate Dave again.
Oh, you can't do Thursday? Oh,
I mean, I think he can't do anything before
Oh,
6.
oh,
That's my
okay.
understanding.
Now, thinking ahead, our meeting, this is, again, ahead of the game, but we're gonna be meeting in some cases when Catherine's available.
Right, yes.
'Cause,
yeah.
he's gonna have commitments and he's gonna have time travel and travel to get here and so forth. So he may say, I can only meet you at 4 in the afternoon.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So there could be some things coming up. Can't anticipate it. but it's-
right.
The May 1st, the next week's wide open if we want to. But, we're pushing another week. We're trying to move.
Can we meet?
okay.
We can't meet remote, we can't meet at the library.
Could you
We can't
reach out
meet
to
somewhere
Dave
else.
and
We have
see
to
what
meet here.
his-
Yeah.
See what his, I mean, my preference would be, again, 4:30 on the 23rd or 24th, or 7:15 on either of those days.
How often do those meetings actually
Well,
run?
if-
Just an hour?
Yeah. And May 1st is open. Of course, that'll be 3 weeks.
Yeah. And this
Monday,
is-
the 29th.
I could also, do we definitely have to meet here?
That's what I was about the,
Well, if we have to record it.
Doesn't it have to be zoomed?
the owl.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if we can meet at a different location and
Yeah.
use the owl and then record it. I could look into that as well.
The library?
Yeah, I don't know. Are people open to that? Do you want me to pursue that? or
That would be
just pick
fine
one
with
of
me.
those dates?
Try to find out, have a reference to it.
Yeah, as this process moves on to Kate, and we had discussed this somewhat at the senior center meeting just a couple of days ago. To the extent that we can expand our technology access and kind of, as opposed to being forced into this room within the narrow confines of all the other meetings being scheduled, I think it's advantageous because there are going to be a lot of meetings and they're going to be happening. And Katie had an interesting idea about how we might be able to accommodate the technology and expand places where we might be able to meet.
It's just that I have an Owl Lab system, so it's like it's about the size of Dan's water bottle that you just stick in the middle of the table, and it has a 360-degree camera, so it functions.
Moves automatically?
It moves automatically to the person who's talking, so it would show. We would have two screens on the Zoom, one that is a 360-degree view, and then one that shows each person as they're speaking. But I don't know. I'll talk to Cindy and to Carly about that. Barry, did you?
Yeah, you realize that there's also a new conference room upstairs in the Great Hall?
There's a new conference room up there.
Oh yeah, we
is that
could do
right?
that too. And is that one's all outfitted out already as well? So yeah, so I guess we could meet upstairs as well. Yeah. So
Nice going, buddy.
thanks, Barry.
I'd do that.
So all right, so why don't we?
As opposed to
Legit, whatever time, 6
We're
o'clock.
going to do
like
the
we'll be-
24th at
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah,
Is that
Yeah.
if that's,
Do that.
okay.
Yeah.
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock on the 24th. Okay.
Eastern Standard or Daylight Savings?
All right, then that one would be in the upstairs room. Okay, and I will just, that one will require, since it's at the exact same time, I'm working with Cindy about having a second official Zoom account for the town. That's the only way that works.
Okay.
So, since it's at the same time.
Good.
Yep. All right, wonderful. So, any other items before we adjourn?
Oh, got a hand up.
Oh, Pauline, is your hand back up again?
It is just based on the, I don't know what you just called it, but the availability, seeing on Zoom. I don't know why, but everything seems to be working fine on Zoom lately. So it should just work wherever you are in town hall. I'm sorry, I only heard bits and pieces of the conversation, so I ran into the room to go back on the iPad and contact you, but it seems everything works fine from wherever you are in town hall.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good to know.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, wonderful.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Hey, chair says aye. Thank you, everyone.